Welcome, gentlemen. This is going to be a great podcast. I'm super excited to chat with you guys. So, a couple questions. I guess I should go around the room and do introductions. That would be polite. Seb, what do you do?
Well,
a lot of things.
where do you want to start? Motivational speaking, consulting, overseas work, security work, content creation.
And what were you?
I was a police officer for 20 years.
Sergeant Major, retired ERT. Yeah, he's the commando in the room for tonight, so we're excited. What about you there, Aaron Chua?
35-year veteran of the real estate industry, coach. Not as big of a badass as Seb.
But still, and my real estate coach. Awesome. Ian Batra.
Hi, Ian Batra. In the real estate business, run a top producing team in the Silicon Valley, have a small development company, soon to be a much bigger development company, and we work in the real estate space, but also do training and help realtors all over the country. But yeah, generalized real estate space of all kinds.
And Javier Mendez. What do you do, brother?
So I have a team. I'm in real estate right now for 29 years. I'm also the coach with Tom Ferry, and I've done speaking engagements as well.
Yeah, just a note to that, the reason why these gentlemen are here sitting today, not just because they're my good friends, but we're in Banff, and they were at our Stonehaus Realty retreat and blessed the stage with their presence. So I appreciate it, guys. And we're just about to go eat and drink here shortly, so we wanted to have a couple chats before we started. So the first question I wanted to start with is, you all have reached a certain amount of excellence in your careers, in your fields, whatever it may be. If you could give a quick synopsis of what are the things that if you knew before, like I'm just going to use one like hard work, mindset, that kind of stuff, right? What are some of the key factors, and we'll dive into them a little bit, that you wish you knew before that has really contributed to your success? And hindsight's 2020. So yeah, if you could start, Seb.
Things that I wish I knew before.
Or maybe you didn't even wish you knew, but the things that did contribute to that success. And then obviously, if you really knew that, having a good schedule, even though you did implement it, was that's something you would have maybe focused on more or whatever it may be. What are the things that contributed to your sex? Sex?
Yeah, so
Sexy.
A variety of things contributed to my success. Evidently, hard work, dedication, focus, self-discipline, those types of things that will come as no surprise to anybody. Some of the things that I wish I did differently perhaps would be setting up the way I do everything so that I'm more efficient. And so instead of using more time in doing everything I do, I would be using my time better. Gotcha. And that would have likely helped also keep my family together.
Yeah, that's an important part. I love it. Aaron, what do you think?
I mean, if we look back, to the late '80s, I think it's just discipline. If I could just have more discipline in my relationships, in my friendships, in my business, set 2 or 3, 4 items that have to be done every single day, do them with consistency, and do them to a high level, I think success would have come much sooner and would have stayed much longer.
I love it. Ian?
I think for me, I going back, I would have, similar to Aaron, I would have started sooner. I would have gone bigger sooner, and one thing I like to say, I would have gone deeper, not wider. I would have. In hindsight, it's always 2020, but I can look back on things and opportunities and things in this business where I probably wouldn't be retired because that's not how I'm wired. That's not how I'm not personally wired. But I could be retired today if I had done certain things or taken certain opportunities. Now obviously we're doing well these days, but if I could go back 20 years and tell that person, hey, do this, this, and this, I would have gone deeper, not wider, and I would have gone for it, and I would have done a lot of things sooner.
So on that, would you say you wish you risked more sooner? Is that, or because trying new things sooner? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Risk has never been my problem. I actually am kind of a risk taker, much to my wife's chagrin. But I am the risk taker. So, but it would have been more focused. And I think when we were talking to your company, your agents yesterday, 2 days ago, when I was talking about it, my focus, I was very unfocused in my younger years, and I spent a lot of time chasing and doing things that had nothing to do with business or success. And I don't regret a minute of it, because as I mentioned, I kind of learned to be a happy person, and I learned enjoyment in life before I learned about monetary success. And that's one thing I've just learned from spending time with successful people. There's a lot of miserable successful people out there, and there's some very happy successful people. The two are completely independent of each other. The happy people, I think if you took away the money and from the happy people that are successful, they'd probably still be happy people. But then again, anybody who's really struggling and having money problems in their life, they're always miserable. So not having enough will always make people miserable, but being able to be happy with, just enough, it's independent of success. And so I find like that's some skill some people have to learn, is to be happy, and then they'll be happy when they're successful. But some people are miserable and they chase all this success. By the time they have all the money, they never learn to be happy, and they're just miserable. They're miserable people with a lot of money.
Still miserable. Mr. Mendez.
I'm going to go with what I said before about the limitations, right? If I would have recognized my limitations before, then I would have had no boundaries, right? Releasing those limitations, realizing that there is no limitations for my success is one of them. I had kids early, so I was the opposite of you. Like I didn't want to take the risks because I had a baby involved, right? So it was there was limitations for me because I was so concerned about raising my baby correctly. Right. Also putting 30% back of time into my business instead of celebrating and having the money that you had and just went out and partied.
Let me ask you something. What was the trigger that was it something that just came over time, or was it a moment in time that you changed your mindset to see like there is no limits? How did that happen? Because you said at the beginning there was limits. Yeah. And then later on there wasn't. When was there the change there?
Probably when my kids turned older and they were self-sufficient. And then there was a cool podcast. It wasn't even a podcast. My son and I, when I take him to school, we do our affirmations, but we also listen to YouTube videos. And Les Brown, I'm sure everybody knows who he is. He said, if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. And that just sticks with me from here on out.
That's huge. Say that one more time.
If there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Cool. So does anybody want to add to any of those things? Aaron? No? So I want to kind of dive down into a little bit more of these things. A couple of things that we talked about in this conference that kind of came up and was like, oh man, that's pretty awesome. Having the focus, because a lot of it, this was kind of mind shifts in certain things, like going bigger faster, going deeper faster. This one was more like understanding that I can do whatever I want and allowing yourself to risk. You guys were very parallel when it came to, yours was obviously work hard, etc. And then also not work easier, work smarter, more systemized, etc. Right? And then yours was just really being consistent, which also ties in with systemized. So let's go into that a little bit, because I feel like for myself, that was one of my biggest game changers, is even just using my Google Calendar, you know what I mean? And not chasing what's happening, right? What are some of the things that you guys have, earlier on that you didn't do that maybe you do now? I know, Seb, now you're taking a master's degree, and that's something that you haven't been in school for a while, right?
25 years.
25 years, right? So this is a whole new challenge. But what are some of those things that you've taken from your past accomplishments and created those systems that you're now applying to your schooling now, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things was always how much time I spent actually focusing on what it is that I needed to do and what was interfering with that I let interfere with that. It wasn't miraculously interfering with it. I let things interfere with what it is that I was doing. So now something very simple for me, I know I have to study a minimum of 5 hours a day. That is a non-negotiable, okay? So what I do is I put an hour timer every time I sit down in front of my screen. So my screen comes up, the first page comes up of the documents I have to read, or whatever the case may be, the essay I have to write. I press my button, and every time I get interrupted, I pause it. So when I'm done my day, I have my 5 hours of actual studies. Like there isn't a single minute of that wasn't dedicated to this study.
I can attest to this because I literally came and talked to you and you stopped the button. So he's not bullshitting.
I can too.
So that's huge because I think a lot of it, sorry to comment on this, I'm going to go straight to you, Aaron. One of the things that I've noticed is, and especially in our field, and I've done it a million times before, is I'm going to do 2 hours of calling, or I'm going to do an hour of this. And really, and I think you touched on this in the conference, is because you didn't prep for it properly, because you didn't do this, because you didn't do that, now you're looking for phone numbers, you're looking for clients, who am I calling, all this other bullshit, 2 hours goes by and you're only calling for 20 minutes, right? So, and that stuff is all work and needed to be done, but it was an excuse not to do what's really more important, right? I love it. Aaron.
Well, I think Seb nailed it. For me, it's proper preparation, right? So if I sit down and I'm not prepared, any distraction can distract me. If I sit down and I'm prepared, and I'll use Seb as a great example because he brings his books, he brings his computer, brings everything, he's prepared. Yeah. If you didn't have, there's just, it's singularly focused. And for me, it was the exact same way. It was, we would set a timer. Mine was a little bit less, 25 minutes, and nothing was allowed to distract me. And you've heard this, I've told you the story, at one point my wife distracted me and we fired her.
Yeah.
It was just, this is the...
Your wife.
And,
Wow.
And she refused to leave, and we had the cops come take her out of the office.
She loves this story, by the way.
Right? So listen. So we just, but we had a great culture, we had a great system, but everybody knew, like, hey, when you're prospecting or when I'm doing this, the building better be on fire if you're going to interrupt me, because that's my priority right there. So, to take it a little step further, we talked about this in the conference, but it's most people just, prioritize their schedule instead of scheduling their priorities. So the huge change in that is if something interrupts me, I need to move that to an area in my schedule that is a lower priority. I don't just push it off to the next day at the end of the day. You have to have a grasp of what's important and make sure that those tasks are getting done first.
And one of the things that you actually, to add on to what you've done, and you've taught me as well along the ways and conversations, is, and this adds to all of it, to be able to do that focus, to be able to have that preparation, to have the systems there to make sure it's all prepared, right? So the agents, the business people, whoever, they're not having to do that other work because the real money is made in the prospecting, not in finding the phone numbers. The real money is made in the actual studying, not collecting the books and the paperwork. The real money is made in whatever. So outsourcing and having systems to provide all those things so you can focus on the actual earners is probably, it's been a game changer for me.
For sure.
100%. Ian, you want to add to that?
Yeah, similar, but a little different approach. At some point you learn, or we all learn, we have the same 24 hours in the day, and we spend a third of those, hours sleeping. Yeah. And so allocation of time becomes so important. Out of those, say, 16 waking hours, you have to fit in, there's time for business and success. When we talk about, we also have to fit in your family time, your time for health, some focus in building my real estate career. I neglected health at times. I gained weight. I had issues with that. So now it's about prioritizing, and I've become more intentional because now I have to prioritize my health. I have to prioritize my time. I have to prioritize when I'm going to eat. I have to prioritize when I'm going to work. So as you mentioned, using your Google Calendar, so scheduling out my day becomes so much more important. And especially as I grow my business, my role in the business changes. So you're not an individual agent who can fly by the seat of my pants anymore. People are relying on me, my agents are relying on me, I have meetings and schedules, and on top of that, I want to go in and hit my workout, hit my, everything else. So I think it has really come down to like how we prioritize our time and how we allocate our time, and knowing that every minute's valuable, but when you need to take time off, when you need an hour to decompress, or if it's watching a TV show, just to clear your head, or reading, we read a lot of business books, but there's value to reading a fiction book just to enjoy and clear your head. So honoring that time and knowing, hey, that's an important time too. That's not a waste of time, that's an important time. But learning to also that there is such a thing as wasted time. Mm-hmm. So I never want to waste time. I want to honor even my fun time, my hanging out with my friends, or cracking a bottle of wine with Aaron. That's super important to me, but that's also valuable time that I'm prioritizing in.
Love it.
For me on time, is having the calendar like what we talked about, right? Realizing my life is not my own until after 5 o'clock, right? So that's what I put on my board. Life is not my own until from 9 to 5, it's not my own, right? That's my work time. And having the tasks out in your calendar, but I have to remind myself because I'm ADD and beyond, right? So I will see squirrel, monkeys, and frickin' whatever else, right? So when the alarm goes off, I'm like, okay, I gotta look at my phone. Oh, that's my next time. So it's just recognizing life is not your own. When you start work, it's not your own.
Yeah.
But it's part of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, part of it, what I've noticed having these calendars and things is before I used to always say, you work your butt off and you're just like, oh man, I worked so hard. And then you actually look at what you've done and it's been F all, right? And then, or days you're like, I haven't done anything. But then if you didn't, because it's just easier, just went by and you look and you're like, wow, I actually did accomplish a lot, right? Whereas when you have everything in the calendar, you can actually shut off for the day because we're here, we've done it, we've done everything that we needed to do, right? So I think, it's been a huge change. Okay, Seb.
So just the one thing I'd like to add on this is being busy, right? Here's the most giant myth there is. Like if you were to follow somebody around that complains all the time that they're busy, you can literally strike wasted time every 5 seconds, everywhere they go, everywhere, and they tangle their feet, on the way to the washroom to speak to someone in the hallway for 20 minutes. Then they do this, then they do that. Next thing you know, you're like, hey man, you're super busy, but you spend 7 hours doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're actually busy in your mind, but you're actually not.
They're probably trying to prove it to themselves that they are busy. Yeah. That's why they keep saying it, right? It's like, yeah, I'm busy. Yeah, okay, dude.
I was going to say for us, we put things as simple as printers and copiers at the desks of everybody in our office. We had 300 people in the office. Every single desk had a printer and copier. I bought this giant copy machine. It was $40,000 or $50,000 that did 500 pages a second or something crazy a minute, and it became the water cooler. Mm-hmm. So people would gather, and that was the thing. And I'm like, well, that was a mistake. We just lost productivity, and so as soon as you learn, to value that time, as soon as you put a dollar figure to it.
I think you almost have to teach people have to learn how to prioritize their time, because we started in grade school teaching kids about busy work. The first thing they do is teach you, do this homework, do this nonsense. Most homework's nonsense. I know, my daughter, I have to get my daughter, who's a similar personality to me, ADHD, and I have to make my daughter do her homework. And what are we teaching kids from a young age? This is just stay busy, and you notice people who are highly successful business people, they make better use of their time. We all get the same 24 hours, just some people make better use of that time.
And I think both of you guys, all of you guys really hit it on the nail, and especially the value thing. And I think one of the things is entrepreneurs, many of them transfer from the 9-to-5 job. Right? There's very few that started at 15 years old as an entrepreneur, right? And most jobs are 9-to-5, punch in, punch out, right? So we have that mentality that if we're showing up, that's good enough, right? Where the reality is that if you can work 3 hours and get such amount, I guarantee 99% of real estate agents, and most entrepreneurs, they actually work 3 hours. That would be equivalent to 6 days of actual work of what they're doing. Because they show up, they're talking, having a coffee, they're doing this, and they feel like they've worked because they've been out of the house. But the shift that I had in my head is okay, I could be with my kids, I could be doing jiu-jitsu, I could do whatever, right, that I actually love doing as well, if I just focused and just work for 4 hours instead of booking off 8, you know what I mean? Because that 4 is actually productive, right? Crazy.
I think once you start looking at life in the sense that every hour you give to anybody is an hour of your life you'll never get back. You start chipping away at hours and times very quickly. Because that's pretty compelling,
Realizing that when I did my prospecting, what you were just talking about, right? I would FSBOs, expireds, and then I would do door knocking, whatever it was. If I didn't follow up, guess where all those people went? To another realtor. Follow-up is still just as important as creating the business as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Today I go, if you give me 3.5 hours a day, I'll make $1 million in the first year. All I want is 3.5 hours of it, and they're like, "Oh, done."
So yeah, exactly. It's so hard to do the consistency. That's the issue.
Okay, so next question. And I think this applies to every human being in all types of fields. Growth, getting better. I've heard many times before, and so this is just kind of like the debate and how growth is in your life. But I've like, oh, Sean, why do you need more? Sean, like you should just slow down so you can. Sean, why don't you retire? You know, like these are different things I've heard before, right? It's almost like people like, why do you need to grow, right? I'll go into why I need to grow at the end because that's the least important next to you guys. But have you guys, what is your need to grow? And I don't necessarily mean to go financially. It could be spiritually. It could be, you know, getting smarter. It could be whatever. You guys are all highly successful, so I know without a doubt you always want growth, right? Why is that? Can you explain that a little bit to me? Seb?
Well, being stagnant is not very good for the mind to begin with. It's not good for your self-confidence. It's not good for anything, really. One of the things that I'd like to point out, though, aside from why I like to grow, is that what happens when somebody sees you is it essentially expose their insecurities. Because now it's not you, and they don't have an issue with you wanting to grow, but the more you grow, the less they feel good about themselves. So it's not about you, it was never about you, it was never about me, it was never about Aaron, it was about them and their insecurities, right? So for me, it's growth is important, but it has to be meaningful for me. You know, it's not just about achieving this or achieving that. Like right now I'm doing this degree, it's not gonna do anything for me aside from making me better as a human being, and that's all I care about. Right? So I think, you know, as soon as they say, what is this that Les Brown says? If most people die at 25 and don't get buried until 65 or something.
So there are more ideas buried in the grave, more ideas buried in the grave than they are alive right now.
Sure. And he says that most people basically live to be 25 or 35 and then they don't get buried until they're 65. And it's so true.
Well, I think for me it's a little bit different because my growth has inverted over the last 10 years, right? So, you know, the amazing guy that we work for right now, when I moved to Cabo San Lucas, you know, read me the Riot Act. Like, you have all this potential, you can do all these things. And I'm like, I'm doing these things. I'm doing what's important to me. Growing, you know, inside, growing in my relationship, growing and, you know, trying to get healthy and doing things that I want to do. So, and when it was, you know, when we owned Direct Lender, it was, you know, a different agenda. It was planes and boats and cars and houses all over the world. It was money. And then now it's relationships. Now it's people. It's being a better person. It's, you know, leaving the world a better place than I entered it. It's being the guy my dog thinks I am. Like I could never live up to that. But if I could, you know, I'd be pretty comfortable.
Yeah. And so obviously you went through a dramatic change of like massive company, now you're coaching, et cetera, et cetera. What was, and to Seb, to you too, is obviously it's been, and you said meaningful. Is that meaningful to your purpose? Is that meaningful? Because I think this is an important thing to kind of touch on, right? I'm not talking about just money. I'm not talking about whatever. Is maybe one of the traits of a successful I'm going to get this word down one day, of a successful entrepreneur or person in general, just actually has a grasp of what their purpose is, right? Would you want to comment to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think Aaron and I are very similar in that way because we've had several conversations already about that. But I think serving the collective, I know for me, I mean, I've spent a lifetime of doing everything I could to help and support a collective and be there instead of being the person that's on the sideline looking in saying, oh, I would have done this, I would have done that. You know, I kind of stepped up and put my neck on the line and make some calls, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and so be it. But at the end of the day, investing in the collective, and this kind of feeds into the legacy piece. And people talk about legacy because everybody wants to leave a legacy. And it's such a skewed concept, the legacy concept, because what is it that you are after actually? If you don't mind, so here's the thing, like hear me out on this, right? Like people want legacy because they want to be able to attribute certain things back to their names. I don't care about that. I want to leave the place a better place. I don't care if anybody ever mentions me again, right? But at the very least, I will have done everything I possibly can to make the people that I've met along the way better, and for them to continue to do the same to other people. So just as humanity, imagine what we could accomplish if we didn't care who takes the credit. But we're not like that. We're consistently looking at building empires and taking the credit for things, and and that's why we have all these teams operating in different silos, and I'm talking about the medical field and cancer research and all those things, because everybody wants to be the person that comes out with the whatever, right? The result that comes out with something to show for, instead of let's all get together and make humanity better. So it sounds a little bit, spiritual or whatever, and it to a certain extent it is, but for me, that's all that matters.
It's funny that you mentioned that, and I'm the same way. I want to change the world into a better place, because generally speaking right now, I think it's gone to shit. But the name that I want, which is funny, is like I want my great grandkids when I'm long gone to be like, oh, this is where the Zubor line changed. For me, that's the name that I want remembered. Doesn't matter. Like I don't care, if somebody in a different whatever knows who I am because I built a corporation. It's more of a legacy in my bloodline more than anything. And that's ego, obviously.
Most of us, you don't realize it, and my wife will hate the second thing that I'm going to say here, because what I tell people all the time is that we have an orphanage in Nepal and we do all of these things, and I serve on all these nonprofit boards and I do these things, and when people say, "Oh, that's amazing, you do all these things," and I go, "Yeah, but it's selfish." And my wife's like, "That's not selfish. It's selfless." I'm like, "No, it's selfish." When you do these things and you learn how it makes you feel, it's so much more rewarding than money, right? So all of a sudden you get to this point where you're like truly selfless, but it's selfish. My goal in life is to win a Pulitzer Prize in photography, not because of me, because it was my mother's goal, and it's and it's selfish.
Yeah, 100%. I think. If people just chase money for money's sake, they quickly find that that's very unfulfilling. And so for me, like in my business growth, the numbers change. There were times when I never thought I'd financially achieve the success I've achieved financially to this point, and now I have financial goals. But my reasons for the financial goals are not just to have more stuff or more money or this, that, the other. It's what you do with the money ultimately, and that's the big thing. It's like you can make real positive change with money, but it's also security. Like there's another thing, the selfish reason too. It's security for myself and my family. We're in a world today where there's a lot of things changing. in inflation, things like that. People, there's people out there who all of a sudden feel like they're wealthy because their house went up in value. I'm like, wait, you still have the same house. Your life hasn't changed. Your house just went up in value. So, and I think years ago, so for me, when you talk about growth, there's financial growth, but definitely, like as a person, I when I was younger, and even when I first got into real estate, when we get like within our organizations and things we belong to, I used to want to, and Aaron did this, agents who want to be famous within our ecosystems. And I did have that feeling. I had the fear of missing out, or when I wasn't invited, wasn't asked to speak on a panel or a stage. And at some point, that ceased to matter to me. And I said, I don't care if I don't actually care about being on stage for stage sake. I care about being on stage because A, it helps people and makes a difference, and B, it does come back in terms of business. So, and what's weird is when I stopped caring about being on stage as much, I get invited to speak so much more often. Like I didn't ask to come here, you asked me. Now all of a sudden people come ask me, and people say, hey, come speak at my conference, come travel, come speak, come be on this panel, come help, and I'm contributing positively, but it's not because I don't have this dream that I want to do it. Now it's just happened, and it's the same thing in everything else. For me, growing as a person, or growing health-wise, so now, just to build my business, I neglected my health. I look at pictures and I joke, I call people, oh, that's fatty in. And I've told people this, and then they don't see a picture, and then I pull up pictures and I show them, like, no, this is me 4 years ago, huge, and so now I've changed how I prioritize my life. It's not just about money and business. It's now about becoming a more balanced person, about being able to give back more. And again, it's probably my financial goals are way bigger than I ever thought they would be, and I have no doubt I will achieve my financial goals, but the purpose and the reasons behind them has changed completely. And again, if I found that those financial goals are not going to fulfill my life, I would shrink them back in a heartbeat if the purpose changed.
I keep on looking down at this, and this is a perfect example. my wheel of life, right? Once it gets perfected, then I'm down. It's not perfected. It literally looks like this. And it ain't going anywhere, right? So that's my
rounded though.
Right? Well, mine's kind of like down here a little bit, but I want to perfect this. That's what, and then once I can perfect it, I guess my kids will just follow. I really had a whole different aspect, when Sienna had her baby. Now it's like, wow, I'm going deeper on this, aren't I? It's crazy.
So do you find, I just want to, because I know you well, I don't think you're chasing perfection, you're just chasing better. Is that what it is? Or are you balance? Gotcha.
Wheel just has to be able to flow. Right. And then once I discover that, I'm good. I'm solid.
I love it. That's good. Okay, so I got one other question. This is something that comes up, and this is something to do with mindset a little bit as well. Is a lot of people, if they don't know who I am, right, and they just met me as Sean, what I do now, automatically assume that it's been easy, or like my parents are rich or whatever, which are none of the case, obviously, right? And I just tell them, they're like, if you could say, how did you get any success in this such short period of time? It was because I made more mistakes than anybody. And I just learned and corrected, right? In your guys' fields, obviously, I want to talk about mistakes, like screwing up, and what's your mentality, and why do you think, like, when something happens in your life that sucks, or it's a mistake or whatever, how are you guys dealing with these situations? Mistakes. Seb.
I kind of come from a world where I've been exposed to such attrition rates on some of the courses that I've been on, starting with 36 guys and graduating 10. Those types of things, just very, very difficult endeavors with seeing people, and good people, not bad people. I wasn't any better than any of those guys, but for them to not make it, and for me to just focus and continue moving forward one step at a time, not looking 10 miles ahead, but looking where I'm going next, and kind of focusing on that and staying in the game. For me, failure is such an integral part of the business that I was in, that it wasn't even a topic of conversation. If you hadn't failed a whole bunch of times, you weren't on courses hard enough. And that's and that's really interesting, because if you look at some of the issues that we're having right now in the military, for example, special operation world, specifically, is that these kids are coming in, they're faster, stronger, they have all the tools to be successful, but their varsity, polo, water polo freaking captain or whatever, and as soon as they hit their first failures, the first time they ever failed, they ring the bell and walk out. Completely insane.
Is that attached to ego? Is that what it is?
100% it is. There is no question it is. That's ego, insecurity, and how do I not embarrass myself further? When I just take myself outside the equation, right? Evidently, it doesn't lead anywhere but regrets, right? So for me, conversation about failures, do you know who has that? People that don't fail. And people that don't fail just don't push themselves. So it's not even a conversation, in my opinion.
They don't take risk.
Yeah, precisely.
Listen, every time I've had a massive failure in my life, it has honestly turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. We owned a big nightclub that was very, very successful, and when it failed, I got back into mortgage in real estate. And then, we owned a company building and shipping custom cars to Japan that in 99, when the economy failed, I got back into mortgage again, and then, built a massive company that, the reason that I'm not as concerned about money anymore is because when that failed, I probably had $6 or $7 million in the bank, and it all went bye-bye. It was all illusory, right? And that company failing was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I'm a way better person today than I ever was prior to that day. So failure has just been good. So I welcome it like a warm blanket.
Yeah, I love it. Well, at the end of the day, in jiu-jitsu, there's a saying, and I'm sure it's been whatever, I just see it on every jiu-jitsu meme ever. It's like, you either win or learn. That's about it, right? And And the reason why I'm asking about these mistakes or failure in business and everything is I see it over and over and over. People get in their head, just like you're saying, and then they basically disappear afterwards, where it was just like, man, what were you expecting? You think it was going to be a flawless victory? You know, this is not Mortal Kombat, right?
I played Mortal Kombat as a kid. Those flawless victories, you have to work for them. Nobody's great at Mortal Kombat the first time they pick up the remote.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, you have to. I think for me, that the saying that always sticks to me, it's not whether or not you're going to fail, or not whether or not you get knocked down. Yeah. It's how fast you get up.
The Japanese say really, really well, fall 7, up 8. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just a very small little kanji that's like a very famous saying for the Japanese.
Say it one more time.
Fall 7 times, get up 8.
I think for me personally, in my years, like one thing I've grown from, especially being a new agent, I used to take losses real personal. Or when someone didn't list their house with me, or whatever the failure, the little failures, I would take them so personally. And now it's just like, okay, on to the next. You know what? Now it's like my first real estate coach always used to say to me, okay, 5-minute funeral. Like, because I would get on like a coaching call or like a session, and I would start complaining about all the bad things that happened this week. Oh, I didn't get this, didn't happen, or this person, blah, and 5-minute funeral.
I love that.
And yeah,
that's
5-minute funeral.
Yeah, no, but like here's like,
be prepared for that one.
we need to honor, like the thing. I think that's something people say, like just brush it off, or like the old coach saying, it's like, no, honor the pain. You have to acknowledge the failure. There was some, I mean, again, the win or the learn, same concept. You acknowledge it, but you don't stew in it. You don't let it destroy your life. You don't binge watch Netflix for 3 days because your sister fired you as her realtor. By the way, my sister fired me as a realtor. That's a whole other story. But
and maybe you do binge watch it for 3 days, but get back up.
Oh no, it was more mature in my career, and I literally was like off the phone, and I went and I think I wrote like 20 million that week. Yeah. No, I was like, okay. I mean, it was a family drama spiting, had absolutely nothing to do with me. It was my sister spiting my dad. Yeah. So, but the thing is, like 10 years ago, I would have taken it so personal. Today, I've built a business. I have clients that are super loyal to me. So my sister trying to get back at my dad because of whatever drama, I was able to take a step back. But these are the things you learn. You learn to look at a situation differently. You learn to understand that, hey, it's not that I'm a bad realtor. In fact, I know I'm a great realtor. It's like, that's not the issue. I know I'm very good at what I do, as evidenced by clients repeat and referral business and the company we built and the agents that are loyal to us, that work with us, everything else. So that's not the issue. It's learning to deal with the situation differently, and then of course looking back at the lesson. But I think that's the thing too. When my agents fail and they're very distraught about it, it's now like, how do we break this down? Why did this happen? Where was the shortcoming? What could we have won this situation? And there are unwinnable. That's the thing people don't tell you too. You can't win every situation. There are unwinnable fights. Every time we don't get the listing, we analyze it. And we look at it and we can say, no, this is where we messed up, this is why we didn't get it. Or we say, you know what, like the sister-in-law was a realtor and they just interviewed us, but they were never going to list with us. They just interviewed us and they were like, we're not breaking up families. Yeah. So sometimes there's an unwinnable situation, so we don't even take it personally. We have to we break down the situation. But again, it's like how fast you get back up. And we're in the real estate business. There's infinite possibility out there. So but also I think people sometimes do fail to honor the mistake. But it's like you honor it, you post-mortem, you break it down, you don't stew in it. You get up and then you keep going.
Javier, you haven't made very many mistakes, I know, but
right. I'm just going to keep it simple. We're talking about less-isms, right? Now we're going to talk about less-isms. If you're going to fall, you better fall on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up, is what he says, right? And I love that. I love that quote. Failure's fear, and fear is false evidence appearing real, right? And so, it's funny because when I heard Will Smith talk about him going on a skydiving trip, right? They're talking and all his buddies are drinking and everything. And they're like, yeah, we should go skydiving. Yeah, let's go skydiving, right? And they're all into it and all that. And I hear that story and he's like, he's like, and then he's stewing on it all night going, well, he was drinking too. I'm hoping, you know, maybe they won't go. Maybe they won't go, right? And he's like, okay, well, I'll show up. Kind of like the whole thing that we did on the river, by the way. I was like, okay, I'll show up to see if everybody else is going to show up. And then we add women to the whole thing. But, you know, and he's like, yeah, no, I'll show up. And, oh, man, everybody's here. What am I going to do now, right? And so you got to go through it, you know. And what he realizes, the fear was overcoming him that whole night that he got no sleep, no nothing. And he got on the plane. And when he said, I got on the plane, I'm looking at the light. You guys know the lights when that green light came on, he's like, ooh, okay, I got to go, right? And they push you out. And they said, I'm going to count to 3. You're going to jump. 1, 2, bam, they push you, right? Because it's not at 3, because what do most people do? Yeah. They grab on, right? And that's what stops people in their tracks, is when they grab on. But then when you're skydiving and they say, look up, I did it once and I won't do it again, by the way. I'm just saying, you probably did it many times. It's bliss, you know. And when I had to kiss that ground, when I got down, it was a beautiful bliss. But let me tell you, but it's fear. Fear is just it sucks.
You know what's really in line with this? What's really interesting is, you know, everything is a watered down version of the fear of death.
Yeah.
That's all this is. So for me, it's always been about how am I going to live with the prospect of my demise in the context of tactical operations or whatever it is, right? Because I had to be able to make some calls and do some things knowing full well that this is very likely that I'm not coming back from this call. And it happened all the time. And I was so convinced of that I would send texts and emails to my wife or my girlfriend and say, hey, love you. And she said, every time you said that, I knew exactly what that meant, right? And people ask me that all the time. The day that I actually accepted that death isn't the end of life, it's a part of it. Yeah. There's no avoiding it. And you can try as hard as you want. It catches the people that run away from it first, always. And the fact of the matter is if you have the ability to overcome the biggest fear in human history, which is exactly that, your own demise, everything else is easy. Yeah. And it is so liberating. There is nothing more liberating than this. It's like, what do you think you're controlling? You are not, right? So when people ask me all the time, if you have the ability to walk that, like to work that fear out of your head, watch what happens to the rest of the areas of your life.
It's just, you're doing everything you possibly can. I agree.
Awesome. Okay, 2 more questions. But
do you want to start this way now?
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. I'll go this way now. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the first one, and I mentioned this in the conference because I feel like this is something that I see over and over and over and over again, is the timeline. And, you know, I want to be a $1 million realtor, right? And, you know, to put Aaron on the spot, a lot of people are like, well, if you do this, you can do it in 1 year. The reality of agents doing it in 1 year is 1 out of 1 million, right? And so these expectations, I'm not saying it's not possible because it's been done before, so it can be done, right? But the expectations of these people and the focus on the future versus the focus of the now, right? I feel like you guys in your successes, when you say I want to now do 10 million or whatever it may be, number aside, right? I think there's logic to it and you realize it's not going to happen next 5 minutes, right? And, you know, one of the things that I love this saying, I don't even know where it came from, to be honest, but, you know, don't compare your starting point to somebody else's finish in their race. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you don't know what they've been through, when they started, et cetera, et cetera. What would be some of the advice that you'd be given on, you know, just staying in your lane, staying in your track and focusing on your future versus the distractions of Instagram, Facebook, you know, all the other crap, even other realtors. And just to add to this point, the reality is, and we all know this, is that in real estate, and I'm sure in many others, right? Actually, I know even in the combat world and so on and so forth, that half the world is fugazi, you know? Like half the world is smoke and mirrors. You see a guy making $10 million, but really he brings home 100,000 because of all his expenses, right? Or you see a guy with a Lamborghini and Ferrari, and that's basically, It's a rental, right? Yeah.
especially right?
Right?
An apartment, yeah.
Exactly, right? So, to add on to that, I'd love to see your guys' opinions and thoughts on like how are you sticking in your lane? And I don't want to use that word like be realistic, because anything can be realistic, but focusing on and where you're trying to be, and not killing yourself saying I haven't done it this. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Kind of like focusing on the goal.
Focusing on the goal, but even if some people just have crazy goals right off the hop, and they're creating that goal even. Like this is something that happened all. That goal is like, that guy made $6 million, right? Yeah. So my goal is $6 million. Right. You know what I mean? It's just this constant comparison instead of living your life in your.
I would definitely. I always live my life. I don't ever compare myself. There was only one time when I told you that I was creating my limitations, because this one guy, took a listing of mine because he thinks he was the best. And then afterwards I hear that he's not. Like all the agents just didn't like him. But to focus on a goal is, if you even make a goal and the journey's towards that goal, so many people focus on the failure of that goal and not realize, since they made that goal, they're way farther than they ever would have if they didn't make the goal. Then that's why I think your life changes. Because now I'm at that goal. I'm 3/4 towards this goal, and there's always next year, and there's always next year. I'm not going to die. And if I do, then I know I died achieving this goal towards where I'm looking at. So I got to stop looking at my failures as much as cherishing the failures when I got, and what could I tweak and change in that route towards the goal. And so,
do you feel like you're appreciating yourself, like the work that you do, and you're appreciating what you do per day more, versus that when I hit this goal is when I'm going to be happy?
On the daily. That's my biggest thing. Is, I guess it took me a little while to grow up. Right? But I mean, when I got older, it's stop and smell this, stop and take a picture of this, stop and just enjoy this, on this journey up to the goal. And then realize, can that be duplicated? Especially in the real estate industry, can this be duplicated when I'm doing it? And if it's duplicatable, guess what? I can get more. So there you go.
So I think that for the realtor that does the $1 million in the first year versus the realtor that takes 10 years or never achieves it, I think one of the big things, it's mental. It's a strange thing. You see people that come young people who come from money, and they just seem to go right in and make money. It's not that there's anything better about people from rich families. It's that that was a concept that was already in their head. Like money was a concept. So I think for people that don't make a lot of money, there's mental work that goes into it to even believing that they could make $1 million. That they could, I think it's somebody. I don't remember. Maybe Seb talked about it when he was on stage with the first guy to break the 4-minute mile, and then how many people? It was like 30,000 in 2 years. 30,000 in 2 years, because all these people in their mind had a mental block that they couldn't do a 4-minute mile, and then 30,000 people could do the 4-minute mile. It's like that with making money. I mean, it's the first time someone makes 100,000, the first time someone makes 200,000. And I think for some people, it's not that they want to beat themselves up, it's that they need to create they need to break down those mental barriers. Because I say this often, and I tell realtors this when I'm coaching my favorite lenses, say, real estate is an extremely simple business. It's stupid simple. You find someone who wants to sell their house, you help them do that. Now you can overcomplicate the process, but the process itself is really simple and easy. And same thing with a buyer. Hey, you want to buy a house? I'm going to show you some houses. We're going to find the one you like. We're going to put an offer in. Like that part of the business is so easy. So why is it so difficult? It's all these. It's the mental stuff. It's the person stuff. It's the personalities but for the realtor, it's the belief that they can do it. I think that's the biggest difference between, and it's why. Now in our industry, there's a lot of realtors doing over $1 million in commissions, tons everywhere, right? A few years ago, and it took me a while to break. First I had to do the $1 million GCI, and then I broke. For me, it was selling 100 million. At some point, 100 million became the new million. Now it's like 500 million, and I haven't hit 500 million yet. So that's that's on my goal. I got it. My real estate team, and I said 500 million because that's the new goal. Right? So I think it's mental barriers. We're breaking through these mental barriers within our industry. But for the new person who's just first setting their goal, don't beat yourself up, but it's the mental work. It's the elevating the brain and to get your brain to understand and believe that you can find that.
So first of all, to touch on what you said, there's a great book called The Gap in the Gain, and the entire book that is that premise. Like, people that don't reach their goal and like, I didn't make my goal, they're in the gap.
Yeah.
And the people that make that same spot and they're like, but look at how far I got, they're in the game.
Yeah.
Right? And he's one of the best business coaches in the world. He also wrote Who Not How, which is another great book. And then for the 1 in a millions, it's 1 in a million for a $10 million agent. For $1 million agent, it's 1 in 10. Right? And I can spend 10 minutes with somebody on the phone and know whether they're capable of it or not whether they'll be able to do it or not. Right? I know, like, many people are capable. I had a new client that was doing about 200 units a year, and he wanted to get to 1,000. And I said, well, we'll have to dig in. He's like, well, can you get me to 1,000? I said, no, I can't. You're the only one that can get you to 1,000 until I know what the type of leader you are, until I know what the structure is, until I know all these other things. You may need to spend the next year becoming a leader, because usually when I come across a team that's doing 200 units, there's a super big ego driver that is a terrible leader burning through people.
This is not me, by the way.
5 years ago it was, but not now. So, until those are, the 1 in a millions, like you have to build that person up over time. But I'm for big, wildly important goals, or big, hairy, audacious goals, because I like teaching people, and I ask my clients in a simple way, hey, if we set this goal and you fall short and you fall here, how are you going to react at the end of the year? And they're like, oh my God, I'm going to be crazy. I'll love this. And I'm like, okay, great. We're going to set a big goal. And some of my clients, they fell this short and they tripled their last year's income, and they're despondent. They can't see. They lock themselves and watch Netflix for 3 days. I'm like, you just tripled your income, but I missed my goal. Like, well, as a coach, I did a poor job of establishing the fact that, you missing your goal was going to paralyze you.
Do you get it though? Like, to kind of go back, do you get this a lot as a coach that, yeah, but this guy's doing this and that guy's doing this and this guy over here, I want to do what he's doing, and so on and so forth, and it's all driven on outside versus actually their goal or them? I just feel, and I've been in a million times before, so I'm not saying I'm a saint by any means. I just find myself every time I'm trying to chase somebody else's goal instead of mine, then I just feel like shit, right?
It's not you.
Yeah.
We get it every day as coaches. And the guy that I just told you about, he's like, well, I want to get to here. And I'm like, I need you to do this, this, and this. Like, I'm not doing that. I want to get to 1,000 units. I'm like, well, you're not going to get to 1,000 units unless you do these things. That's why he's no longer a coaching client. Plain and simple.
Well, I mean, he was relying on you to do the work and set the goal. It was almost like, dude.
Here's what a coach does. And I said this in the event. I draw a map, and I run next to you, and you're riding the bike on the map, and I'm just telling you to stay on the path. That's all I do as a coach. Like, here, I'm going to give you the map. I'm going to show you exactly what you have to do to get there. It's up to you to get there. I can't make you. Tim Grover says it best. I tell you where to look. It's up to you whether you see it.
Yeah.
The old, you can lead a horse to water.
Did you ever see the picture of Michael Phelps and the guy that finished second? That was looking over. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's a great picture.
It's a great picture, and it's metaphorically so applicable to all those things. What are you looking at?
Yeah.
Focus and win.
Yeah.
What are you looking at? Why are you worried about where Michael Phelps is? That should be the least.
You race against yourself.
100%.
And swimmers.
Yeah.
You're basically racing against yourself.
Sure. So, it's the same with goal setting. Now, with goal setting, one of the things that I don't like is I'm going to put this massive goal, but I also don't have a roadmap to get to it, right? It's like, okay, hold on. Like, cool that you have ambitions. Do you have anything to back it up? Because ambitions with no work ethic, ambitions with no path, ambitions with all those things go nowhere. Right? So once you've established your goal, which is kind of in a concept of decentralized command, this would be your commander's intent, so to speak, right? So now you know where this is, you keep it in your peripheral vision, you don't tunnel vision on it, and then you go, okay, but in order for me to get there, this is like down the line, cool, it's in the back of my mind, but my goal this week is to accomplish A, B, C, and D. That's what I'm doing this week. And next week, so now you're not outcome biased. As soon as you start being outcome biased, you're chasing the rounds, right? And that's applicable. You've been on the range, you know how that works. You shoot a bullet in the middle and you try to put the other one on top of it. What do? Yeah. You move left or right, and instead of like focusing exactly on the process the way you did before, which in terms, hit the rounds on top of the other one, right? So that is a key piece. And also,
Can you establish a little bit more on that specific part? Because I think that's something that I think we naturally do, is that there's this big, hairy, ambitious goal, but you break it down to like today's goals of what I have to do. Like, could you give us a little
Sure. There's a few things I guess to unpack on here, but I'll give you an example, say of a very difficult course or a very difficult goal that you have that has a lot of intricate steps and along the way and a lot of potential for failure and catastrophe, and the list goes on and on. When you put, say, 20 humans in a very, very difficult environment, and you say, okay, you guys are here for the next 9 weeks, and for 9 weeks we're going to test you, we're going to train you, we're going to get you ready for what the goal that you want to be.
Pass that course.
Whatever, yeah. And so if you give them the syllabus and you hand it out freely, generally speaking, those that do not look at it are successful, and those that look at it are not. Why is that? Because it fuels their insecurities. There is so much, and you can't see yourself be successful on that way to that massive goal that you have because you are looking too far ahead, right? And you're not focusing where you need to be focused. So what I did on my courses, where it was, and everybody was sharing the syllabus and everything, is like, don't even show me this thing. Tell me what we're doing tomorrow. Tell me what we're doing the day after. And I never once worried about anything. And then we finished the course, and these guys are like, oh my God, this was the most stressful thing of my entire life. And I'm like, I have zero stress. I always knew that whatever was in front of me, I could dominate. But if I looked 17 things down the line, there's a good chance that a little voice would have been like, psst, you're gonna fail.
Right.
And I would have been like, and so what happens is the little voice starts creeping on you and your internal mechanisms, and now what does the brain do? Now you're spotlighting. So now you're magnifying the risk of whatever it is that you are trying to accomplish or going through. So now it's now 10 times worse than it should be in your head.
Yeah.
Of course it isn't, right? And so it's a very fine balance. Another thing that, before I wrap up on this is you have to allow yourself to be successful. Give yourself permission. Like say I allow you to be successful.
That's one of my affirmations.
Yeah, 100%. I might have said that on the first podcast we did that you never released and probably never will. So I can so I could probably repeat it. It wouldn't matter because it will never be heard. But this was a realization I had. So I go back to school before going to policing, because when I was a teenager, I was a shithead. So I left school.
I think all of us were.
I was kicked out of school, until the end of the year. I never graduated. All this stuff. All of a sudden, I decided I want to go back to policing. Now I have to focus. I have to get my schooling done. So I go do my schooling. I sucked at math. I always had like 15%, 18%, 20%. I was horrible at math, always. But now I'm going back on my own accord, and I really want to drive into that goal. So I start studying math, and I'm like, I'm going to own this math thing. Next thing I know, 96, 95, 97, 96, 95, 97 on the board. And I'm like, what's with the 100%? Why is it so elusive, right? And so one day I was fed up with this, and I'm like, I'm going to go home, I'm going to study twice as hard as I did for all these other books, and I'm going to come back here and slay it and have 100% on the board by the time I come back next Monday. I come back next Monday on the boards, Seb, congratulations, 100% on your exam. After that, I couldn't fail. It didn't matter if I left 45 minutes before the end of the exam, I still scored 100. For the first time in my life, I was worthy of that 100. For the first time in a realtor's life, they were worthy of making $1 million. You have to allow yourself, because if you don't, you are going to self-sabotage. That's
4-minute mile.
100%. My 4-minute mile. My 4-minute mile.
And to tack onto that for real estate agents, and the way that I do it with my agents is this: it's the old Tony Robbins Dickens technique, and that's where do we want to be in 5 years? Okay, in 5 years we want to have a team that's closing 1,000 units. And I say, okay, if our average agent's closing 12 units a year, that means we have to have 82 agents on our team within 5 years. So at 3 years, if our attrition rate's maybe 10% per month, we need to be here, which means we need to be here in 1 year, which means we need to start here today. These are the 2 things you need to do today for the next 2 weeks, and then we're just going to keep adding small little, atomic habits. and get you. By the end of the year, we need to have 10 agents because we know we need to bring on 20 next year and then 30 the year after. And we just put the plan together and we make it so small that it doesn't paralyze them.
Right. So you're reverse engineering.
We just reverse engineer. And Tony would do that in the crowd. You know, imagine where you are 5 years from now and your life is perfect and you have the best relationship and you've earned every dollar that you've ever wanted to earn and where are you? And the whole crowd's closing their eyes and crying. You know, it's the old Dickens Christmas Carol, right? And but people start realizing that, okay, well, this is what you have to do every day in order to get there, and then that's slowly going to step up.
It comes to meet it. And we also established that apparently if you were a shithead in high school, you could be very successful. Be on Sean's podcast like all of us.
That's awesome. Okay, last quick question, okay? For anybody that's going through some tough times, let's just say, that are distracted, and we've kind of notched on this, anybody that's like, I don't know if this is the right time to do this, if, you know, just on the fence in life in anything, right? What's just a quick paragraph, what's the one thing that you would recommend they do?
Just like I said during what we said. So God has given you the greatest gifts behind your greatest challenges. One simple,
Just do it.
move on, just do it.
You know what? One of the most powerful forces in the universe, I don't know if it's the most powerful, but it's gratitude. And when you're going through a tough time, the sad thing is like you will never have gratitude if you haven't experienced tough times. I've seen it with people before. Again, we talked earlier about success and, you know, everything else, and people who are miserable, and people can have all this stuff and be unhappy, and then you have somebody who came from nothing and they get a little bit and they're so grateful for it. So even though you're going through a tough time, everybody has tough times. Nobody's life's perfect. And I think we live in a generation today with social media and everything else where people are always putting out a fake picture. That's one of the reasons we leverage social media, but I'm not necessarily love social media, because I always say it's a fake experience. You know, we even fake the experience. I don't put my hard times on social media. I put the good stuff on social media. So I think we're so used to people being fake, and people don't realize that. So they don't have the gratitude for but the tough time you're having, you know, it will get better. Yeah. This shall pass. And when you get to where you are next and you do achieve that goal, you'll look back and that hard time will make you so much more grateful for the good.
It's probably meant to be.
I'll give it a simple one for me, and I do this all the time with my clients. You have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. Yeah. You have to be completely dissatisfied with where you are, with your station, with exactly what's happening either in your business or your life, to have a breakthrough. And people that are dissatisfied are high achievers. That's that bottom. You know, you mentioned Jocko Willink, so I'm gonna use it. He did a 3-minute video on YouTube called Good. I played it for a client today. I play it, and when I'm done, I'm like, did you get it? Quit crying, rub some dirt in your knees, get back in the game.
Yeah, I'll tie right into my talk, I guess, during the conference, which is don't be a victim. Yeah. Don't be a victim, and it will do a variety of different things. There's always people in your life, and that be kids or spouses or everybody in your life will experience hardship. How you react to it leads. How are you going to lead? How are you going to lead people into their own hard times? And how much of a gift to society or humanity are you if you're having like a very difficult time and you are keeping it together, you're keeping positive, and I'm not talking about toxic positivity, I'm talking about like you are moving forward, you know, and the people around you are looking, they're watching how you're going to react to things. And then when something happens in their lives, they're like, I just remember our Javier or Ian or Aaron, you know, responded to these things, and I know I'm capable of this myself. So for me, going through hardship is always good, because it's like it brings a warrior back outside of the garden for a bit, right? And then the warrior returns to his warrior ways, and then you look around and everybody else is learning from that, and it's making everybody else better. So how can I address this in the best possible way? I had a friend that called me, you know, they lost a baby, stillborn, and a couple years later, maybe 2 years later, they lost another one, right? And he calls me one morning and he's like, dude, I do not know what to say to her. Like, I am destroyed, right? And so that's exactly my advice to him. It was like, look, Leah, his wife, is one of the, you know, and she's totally good. She talks about it openly and stuff, but she is an incredible driving force. Every woman around her is looking at her. She has an opportunity here to make a true statement. Like, this isn't the first time, it's my second time. And, you know, statistically speaking, 1 or 2 of her friends are going to experience the exact same thing within a couple of years here. 100%. So it's like she has an opportunity to make a true statement to her friends and to be an inspiration. And sure enough, she took that route, right?
I'm just going to add a little bit to this before we finish off, because everything that you guys say is something that I try to truly do here. To add to you know, one of the things that you're saying about Facebook and social media or whatever being fake. The reality is my wife and I joke about this all the time. You know how we pick up who's getting divorced next? When the couple's like, we love you so much. I'm just like, they're screwed. Literally a week or 2 later, they're divorced, right? Yeah, exactly. So,
Projecting the picture, not working on their relationship.
exactly. Or, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. But and to what your guys are saying too is, you know, having gratefulness, having all these things, understanding that, you know, whatever you do today could affect other people, right? That's bringing other people in. For myself, one of the things that, and you kind of brought it up, and is that memento mori type process. Like, it is so crazy that we think we are going to die from everything, because we are going to die, but everything, and it's almost the reverse, right? I ask myself, like, if I'm going to lose X amount of money, or there's a risk of, or something happens, am I going to die from this?
No.
And it's like, and then you can go into gratefulness. Well, wait a second, I'm not going to die from this. I may even lose my house from this, but my kids are still here.
Might even get a bigger opportunity, like Aaron was talking about.
By the way, Sean was driving really fast on the way back tonight. I thought I was going to die. But I was actually going to die from that.
But now you're going to take the flight and get there faster.
It's a learning lesson from everything, right?
Right? Respect.
Exactly. And the other thing too that I would just add to this one thing, whenever you're stuck, right? For myself anyways, and I think I've learned this from all of you in certain ways as well, is just move forward. Right? Fail forward. At the end of the day, shit might be going sideways, right? But it's a big FU to what's happening, you know, how you're getting screwed, how whatever the system is, whatever is happening, it's a big FU for just one step forward, right? It's not going to fix the problem, but it's not going to make it worse.
I like the 5-minute funeral. I like that, man. All right, exactly. 5-minute funeral, go. No, we always talk about celebrations. It's like, cool.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. We went, it was supposed to be half an hour, now it's over an hour, and we're late for our gala, but I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much again. Can't wait to do this, and we're going to chop it up and send it to you guys. It's going to be great.